All right, we get it rolling on the Krueger Show, noon West Coast time on this Wednesday, May the 3rd. Hope everybody's having a phenomenal day. Back with us to talk a little bit about the NFL Draft is Alex Barbour, who is from Hail Mary Sports, a great follow on Twitter. Alex, good to see you, man. How are you?
Doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for joining us. And, the NFL Draft was an extravaganza, man. I mean, it's like tons of people watch it. This year was in Kansas City. I kind of felt like, in years past, whether it was in Vegas, we've seen it in a couple spots, Nashville, I think last year. It just seemed like the Saturday crowd was bigger in those venues than in Kansas City. Yeah. When it got to Saturday in Kansas City, I mean, they had a big crowd there Thursday night, pretty good crowd on Friday night. But for Saturday, it was very, very sparse compared to Thursday and Friday. So, yeah. But man, the NFL Draft has become. The ratings for it are still huge. It's the Super Bowl of the off season. What did you think of the show, the draft overall as a show?
I mean, it's entertaining. It's nice to see a lot of people come on, and you get to see guys like Devin Hester announcing picks and stuff. It's cool. You get to be able to see some old iconic stars. There might be some new ones in there that maybe aren't super exciting, but overall, I mean, they allow for a lot of really fun interactive moments where we get to have a little bit of nostalgia, but also get excited for the future. So, I mean, I wish that the first round was a little bit shorter between picks, but I'm just a little bit impatient because I'm excited for the picks rather than just the show.
Well, we are brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out in the Bay Area. 2 locations. They're in Corte Madera and Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week in Marin County from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they're open Wednesday through Sunday in Emeryville, inside the Emeryville Public Marketplace. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. All right. Let's get right to the Niners. Yeah. The Niners, what'd you think of their draft overall? I mean, they didn't have a first round pick. They didn't have a second round pick. So already, some of the draft graders, Mel Kiper and others have given them not the best grade. But that's probably largely based on the fact that they didn't have a first or second round pick and that they took a kicker in the third round. And then I think the other reason that the 49ers are kind of lowly graded is that a lot of people viewed offensive tackle as a primary need. Yeah. And so if you put down, their primary need is an offensive tackle, and maybe they agreed with you, maybe they didn't. But if you write down on a sheet of paper as, hey, their number one need was tackle, and then they didn't draft a tackle, but they did draft a kicker, it's easy to go, what a terrible draft for the Niners. But I think it's a little bit more nuanced than that. Yeah. Why don't we go through it? What did you think of some of their picks?
I'll just say this. I was one of those guys who's not super high on the draft, but I always know that Shanahan has a plan. So who am I to really fully question it? If they didn't want someone like DeJuan Jones, who said NBA is my passion, not the NFL, which just came out today, then I understand it. They want guys who want to play football. They didn't feel comfortable with the guys on the board. They decided to go the route they thought was best. They have like multiple NFC championship appearances to show for it. So who the hell are we really to judge? But I mean, started off by getting Jair Brown traded up for him. We talked about him actually on the show after night one. Big fan of that. I love Jair Brown. And,
tell us what you love about him.
So he's somebody where he uses the physicality properly. I do worry about his athleticism getting, not the best of him. I think he tested 4.58 at his pro day, 4.65 at the NFL Combine. So, he does have some limitations there, but he uses his strength really well. You can tell that he processes the field as well. He can understand route concepts and be able to see where the quarterback's eyes are going. And I love that about him. He has that instinct that I'm looking for in a safety. He was one of my top safeties. I thought I liked him more than most people, and apparently the Niners did too. So excited about that one. And I love Penn State. So, it's a little bit of a bias there.
I like the pick from the standpoint of he kind of reminds me a little bit of Earl Thomas in that I think he's a guy that can play up on the line of scrimmage in the box against the run and come away with a number of big hits. I think we've seen that. But I think he can also play the deep middle, and there's just so many guys who can't play that deep middle. And I'm not as concerned about the 4.65. I mean, would I rather have seen him be 4.45? Sure, but I'm not that concerned just because when you watch the film, this guy is clearly moving in the right direction. I haven't seen any examples where I felt like his lack of foot speed hurt him. He
Yeah.
was the MVP in the uh, in the Rose Bowl this year and really looked phenomenal in that game. He
Mhm.
looked good up on the line of scrimmage against the run, but he also made an interception and looked good in pass coverage. So I love the Jair Brown pick for the standpoint of the Niners lost some culture players. They lost Jimmy Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. They need to reestablish kind of a new culture with some new younger guys. And I loved Brown because he's a character guy. He's a high effort guy who, you talk to all the scouts, they'll say this guy's going to be great for the room.
Yeah. No, I love him. Definitely. He was one of my favorite players coming into day 3 or day 2. And it was good to see that he went to a place where that culture does really matter. And I could tell based on the fact they drafted him, he fit what they were looking for.
Now, what do you think of the kicker from Michigan? I mean, I know it's a high pick for a kicker. The
Yeah.
fourth round is typically where kickers go, or punters, specialists for that matter.
Yeah.
And the Niners didn't have a fourth round pick, and so they reached and at the end of the third round and with those compensatory picks for Moody. But to me, I don't have a problem with this pick because simply, you want a great kicker. Their Niner fans are used to seeing all of their postseason kicks go through the uprights. Robbie Gould's never missed. Those are high standards, and
Yeah.
I don't think that they want to try to go with their third or fourth rated guy. I mean, if you're in the market for a kicker, how many years are you going to be in that market? Probably not more than once every 7 or 8 years. Why not? Why not go for if you really believe that's the best guy? They called him money. Jim Harbaugh says he's the greatest kicker in the history of Michigan football. That's good enough for me. I saw him make a number of big ones. I'll say this: he went 4 for 4 in the playoffs. So if there's pressure that goes with being in the playoffs, it obviously didn't bother Jake Money Moody. What did you think of Moody as a prospect?
I don't really study kickers to be completely transparent, but
Yeah.
I do watch a lot of Michigan tape. And, if I think that we look at guys like Justin Tucker, Mr. Clutch himself, if they end up panning out to be a similar caliber, it's totally worth that third round pick. These guys usually do determine whether a game is a win or a loss. Now, what comes down to the value is there somebody who's going to maybe miss like 3% more that you can get for 50% less value? That's when it starts coming into question. There's a lot of free agent kickers out there as well. But if Jake is money Moody, then you very well might actually be pretty smart for taking him this high.
How about the Alabama tight end, Cameron Latu? This pick was interesting. I thought he was going to be a 5th round pick. They took him in the 3rd round.
Yeah.
He did average 14.1 yards per catch during his Alabama career, and you can see the athleticism out there. But, you hear some people talk, and then you say, well, you know what? The guy's lean in the lower half, and he's not going to have a great base as a blocker. Other people say that he needs work as a blocker. I've heard other people suggest, though, that he's got real upside as a blocker. I was just doing a live stream earlier this morning with Matt Barrows, who did a sit-down interview with Scott McCloughan, the former Niner general manager, who's a great personnel guy, and Latu was one of his favorite picks.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, it kind of has given me pause to be critical of this one. What was your assessment or grade on Cameron Latu?
Yeah, I think he needs to be a little more confident with his hands. That was one of my negatives about him. But when I was studying actually Julius Brents, that was when Cam Latu stood out the most to me. He was able to fake out somebody that a lot of people thought should have been an early day 2/late day 1 selection. He was able to outmatch a corner in route running. So I really like that about him. He does show a lot of quick twitch, and I love a tight end that can flip his hips really quickly. I was a Sam Laporta guy, so I just really do like those styles of tight end. I did feel like he's not as good of a run asset, so it's a little bit unfortunate on that front. But guys play their roles. It's a 3rd round pick. You're not investing a 2nd round selection for this guy to be your tight end 1. He's supposed to fit a role, and I think he can definitely fit a really good role, especially for this offense. He's good on the move as well, and I think he does have upside as a blocker because he is already starting out with such a poor foundation that you can easily build upon it with the blockers that you have on the roster.
So you look at him more as a receiver who needs to develop as a blocker?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah, that's how I'd view him.
And then the Niners went Darrell Luter Jr., a cornerback out of South Alabama,
Yeah.
on day 3, and I love this pick. I mean, to me, Luter is an underrated player. I mean, he's got good size. He's got really long arms. What did you think of him? I mean, obviously nobody's watching tons of South Alabama film,
Yeah.
but what was your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's at the Senior Bowl because I remember watching
Yeah.
his one-on-one tape. And I mean, he was one of those guys who didn't look like a liability on the field. To me, that's the instant check for me is, are you a liability? These drills, the one-on-ones are designed to be receiver specific. Receivers are supposed to win. And seeing Darrell not be a complete liability was a big check mark for me. And you do see a lot of these corners look a little bit lost. And even guys like Tyreek Stevenson, who went way earlier, they can bite on a route and look absolutely foolish. I never really felt that way with Darrell. Darrell looked really consistent. I don't really think he has the upside to be a true starter, but he definitely would be someone who I'd want on my 53 as someone who could step up in case he needs to.
What I liked about him too is just that, that South Alabama he played outside, and I think that when you see the long arms and his ability to kind of jam guys at the line of scrimmage, I mean, they talked about his maturity as a person, but I think this guy's ready to roll. I think he'll be ready to play this summer. I don't know how good he'll be, if he'll ascend to be a starter or if he's just going to be a backup, but I do think he's ready to play. One guy who's kind of, I thought, one of the more interesting picks of the draft for the 49ers was Robert Beal Jr., the Georgia edge rusher, who, was a 5-star guy coming out, and they have so many 5-star guys at Georgia that I think he got lost in the shuffle a little bit.
For sure.
But you're talking about 6'4", with unbelievable speed. I mean, he's got a 4.4 40. He did have a sack in the national championship game against Max Duggan, where he lined up at the left defensive end, beat his man, and got in on Duggan for a sack.
Yeah.
What's your take on Beal? And it's like we're starting to see more of this in college football, where guys go to Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, the teams that really get the most 5-star guys. A lot of times it's like backups at those programs might be the best prospects on the board, and they may have a very little or very short college resume because they just lost out to some other 5-star guy. Those programs are so loaded that we're now seeing guys that don't really even play significant roles consistently get picked on day 3 of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I like Robert Beal. He had a really good size-weight ratio, really good testing numbers as well. And like you said, he was behind a god-tier Georgia defensive front. I mean, pretty much all of them were selected in the first round. If I'm not mistaken, you got Trevon Walker, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and Nolan Smith, all selected in the first round. So you're not really going to expect this guy to compete with those guys and be able to step out on top. And if he were, then, I mean, hell, this is going to be one hell of a steal of a pick. But you're right. He was a 5-star coming in. And then this team, you have really good mentors. I always look at the organization and the system they're being put in and the guys who they have around them. I mean, I'm telling you right now, Nick Bosa is one hell of a good mentor for somebody like Robert Beal, who could definitely use a little bit extra polish since he hasn't had all that time on the field.
Well, and so much about playing on the D line is about it's a technique rich position. But one of the things I love about the Niners' current D line coach and they go with a wide 9 look. Now they do play a lot of stunting games up front. That takes an awful lot of coordination. And you got to work together almost like a basketball team or a hockey team when you're doing a lot of stunting up front, a lot of twisting up front. But the one thing I do like is that if you're coming out of college and you've got that quick twitch and you've got that speed, the wide 9 is the perfect system. It's just like you get up the field, you burn that edge, especially opposite Nick Bosa. They just needed somebody that has great speed that will threaten the edge and scare offensive linemen, and so that they can't just slide the blocking away from this guy towards Bosa. You got to make him play up honest a little bit. To me, Beal is intriguing from the standpoint of in a lot of ways, he had similar measurables to Nolan Smith, who went in the end of the first round of the Eagles.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I love him, especially in a wide nine, because of the fact that you don't exactly need as much polish. We saw a guy named Andre Carter come into the year as a almost consensus first round selection out of Army. He played pretty much exclusively wide nine. And we found out when it came to the Senior Bowl, didn't really have that technical polish and looked really uncomfortable when he was not put in that situation. So it's a great spot for someone who's still learning the game to be able to still make an instant impact. You have the athleticism and then you have the size. It's going to be hard for tackles to take a strong angle and be able to hold the pocket when you have all that force coming at you.
How about D. Winters? To me, this was one of my favorite picks.
Yeah.
I watched him in the national championship game against Georgia, and I saw him in the national semi against Michigan. He's just athletic. I mean, it's funny how the linebacker position is truly transitioned. I mean, it used to be guys were 6'3", 235 to 255, sometimes 260, and if you didn't fit those measurables, you just weren't on the field. Now it's such a speed game. There's so many teams playing 4 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
You got to be able to cover. You got to be able to run. This guy was first team all Big 12. He can run like the wind. He ran 4.49, 156 on the 10-yard split, 30.5-inch vertical. D. Winters is not big. 5'11", about 230. But when I watch this guy, what I loved is just that his ability to diagnose the play and then trust his eyes and just no hesitation, just firing gaps. He made a number of plays against the run in those college football playoffs where I was like, wow, look at this guy come firing up, making a play in the backfield. And he just saw it, saw the crease, saw the opening, shot through there and made the tackle. And it seemed, you watch it once, it looks lucky. You watch it 5 or 6 times, you realize this is a skill.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts on D. Winters. He was rated among the top athletes in the country coming out of Burton High School in Texas. TCU signed him to play linebacker, and the rest is history. I mean, the guy had a tremendous finish to his career.
Yeah, no, D was someone who actually went lower than I expected, especially with the linebacker class being so thin. He tested out well. He shows out on the field. The one thing I think that he could work on is that first step explosiveness. And when you watch a 30.5-inch vertical, that's indicative of the fact that he's not going to be of that explosive first step top tier. But when you see him go, he's like a missile in a straight line. And I love seeing that. You did test out that way as well at the combine. So good for him. But he's somebody that he has the brains and he has the speed. He has the athleticism overall. He can tweak a little bit on the consistency. For me, I did see quite a few of those plays like you were talking about that he does diagnose the play properly, but I feel like he needs to be a little bit more comfortable when the play doesn't go the way that he wants to, when the read is not correct on the first go. Because I was a huge fan of Sidney Brown. He also had that issue. He's a first read type of guy. He's confident he's going to go to the hole and he's going to blow up the play if it goes there. But you need to be a little bit more comfortable with that second stage processing where it's like, oh, I did this wrong. I need to recover. I need to rebound. And that's probably why he fell here. It's usually that rebound process that is what's most coveted by NFL teams because NFL OCs are very, very smart. But I loved it. I mean, I can't really say I love it that much because I go to SMU and he's a TCU player. And so I'm legally liable to not say anything positive against TCU, but my unbiased opinion says it was a really, really fun pick to watch.
What do you make of the ascension of Sonny Dykes' TCU program? I mean, how is Sonny done it? Is it JUCO players? Is it, what exactly is TCU doing? I mean, when you see TCU go 12-1 under Duggan and wind up in the national championship game, you expect to see Georgia. You expect to see Michigan. You didn't expect to see TCU. No. Is that Sonny? Is that Duggan? Is that incredible recruiting? What's your read on the momentum that the Horned Frogs have?
So Sonny was an SMU head coach actually the year before. Funnily enough, they poached him from us and actually flew him in on a helicopter, deservedly so in retrospect. But he was able to bring SMU's program from pretty much nothing up to we were in the top 15 for a couple years in a row. We would get into the top 15 of the top 25, which is incredible. So I think his coaching certainly is a major aspect of that. Obviously, Lincoln Riley's brother being the offensive guru, probably another really good aspect. And having those two coaches there is very attractive. They like to have a lot of speed. Darius Davis went, I believe, in the 4th round. Like, that guy has burners. And you have Quentin Johnston, maybe not the most athletic guy in the world in terms of straight line speed, but he is still extremely athletic, can get open. So they use their players to their strengths. And I think it was primarily the coaching, because it makes it easy for the quarterback to be able to process the field when the guys are in the right place at the right time, because the coaches know how to get them there.
How about the other linebacker they took at the end of the draft, Jalen Graham?
Yeah.
Another guy who's in that 220 range. But like, if you watch him on film, I like this player coming into the year. I thought he had a strong year last year. And I saw the I saw the phone call when Johnny Holland, the Niners, former Texas A&M linebacker, who's now their linebacker coach, he was on the horn with Graham, and you could see the love he has for Jalen Graham, the familiarity that he has for him. If Johnny's getting his guys, the Niners have done an exceptional job. They got Greenlaw in round 5. They got Azeez Al-Shaair after the draft. They took Marcelino McCrary-Ball after the draft. They got Fred Warner on day 2, late on day 2. Yeah. So it's like they're going with smaller, faster linebackers, guys who run close to 4.5, and guys who are in that kind of 220 range, 225. They feel like their D tackles can protect them, I guess, against the run. But I really like the Jalen Graham pickup. What'd you think of Graham?
I'm kind of biased towards Purdue linebackers in the first place. He's from Purdue, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, so, I mean, I love Derek Barnes when he was selected to the damn Lions, and we all know the Lions' linebacker core isn't always the best, but I think Derek Barnes might be one of the best of it, because they teach their guys to have a really hard-working mentality. That Purdue defense, you've seen some really good prospects come out of there, like George Karlaftis. They work their tails off. They don't really get very much recognition for it, and they're always willing to put their heads into the hole, and I love that about them. He may be undersized, but this is probably one of the systems that use those type of guys the best. So for me, he might not make the 53, but he might make the practice squad and be able to be one of those guys who flexes and comes up. And I can certainly see him making a 53-man roster if he does continue to develop the way he does.
Yeah. They're going for these guys that are kind of hybrid players, but the one thing I like is if you have some speed and some agility and you have collegiate production, and especially if you played in a major conference, Big 12, ACC, SEC, to me, that's a great combination. 2 other guys, what do you think of Braden Willis? I mean, Braden Willis is a name that, some people feel like Braden Willis is actually better than Latu. And I was looking at some numbers this morning. Braden Willis grades out as one of the highest rated blocking tight ends, in this draft. Yeah. And he's not the biggest bodied guy. And he gives you a lot of competitiveness, a lot of fire, a lot of effort. There's definitely better athletes, but what do you think of Willis?
So yeah, over on my YouTube, Hail Mary Sports, I did a breakdown of every single pick, and my favorite, I have a favorite and least favorite. My favorite was actually Braden Willis. I thought he fit perfectly. I remember hearing even at the combine, everyone's like, dude, this guy is a 49ers guy. He's like pretty much a use check replacement in the long run. He's really good as a blocker, and I honestly think he's honestly pretty damn good with the ball in his hands. So he's just a little bit older, not mistaken. I think he's 24, but he's definitely somebody where like he fits the mentality of a 49ers tight end or what we call them H-backs. So I think he'd be a really solid H-back. He's going to make the 53. I love him to death. I really do. He's one of my favorite prospects for day 3. And I'm very excited to see that he went to my dream location for him.
What did you like the most about him? Because to me, what a couple things that jumped out to me.
Yeah.
He makes plays as far as receptions, kind of like a wide receiver. He'll pluck it with his hands. But what I really loved more than anything was just I don't know what you'd call it, the fire, the competitiveness. There were several times where, this guy's dragging defenders down the field. He doesn't go down easy. He's also one of those guys. There was a couple of highlights I saw where he caught the ball. He's got a defender around his legs, and you got another defender ready to step up and just starch him. And yet he's taken that hit. He's fighting for extra yards. Yeah. The one common factor or common denominator of the Niner receivers, tight ends and receivers, they operate in the middle of the field without any fear. Yeah. Debo, Jennings, Ayuk. I mean, there's all kinds of guys in the NFL that are kind of peaking. The Niner guys don't do that, and this player doesn't do that. He's just he's a player who I love. To me, the competitive fire will overcome this guy's shortcomings.
Yeah, so I call that Mauler mentality, and you can see it both in the
Okay.
yeah, like after the catch, like you said, you can drag dudes, and I love that. I love the assertiveness in his hands, like you were talking about too. But yeah, I love that Mauler mentality. He's willing to put his shoulder down, and even if he has the ball, or if he's protecting a guy who has the ball, that's going to be like really valuable because he does get out in front. He's not afraid to lead a charge, and he's not afraid to take on a safety coming down straight at him. He's just straight up excited to be able to have contact. And I love guys who love contact. So I love it. Big fan of it.
Yeah. Ronnie Bell, of all the guys they drafted, he probably is the guy that most college football fans will have heard of. Like if you're a casual college football fan, you've heard of Ronnie Bell. He tore his ACL as a junior. He came back that final year at Michigan. It was like it never happened. He had a better year. He seemed really sudden. I don't even see him even wearing a brace.
Yep.
I thought Ronnie Bell had a miraculous recovery from the ACL. You would never have known he even tore it. But what is he in the NFL? I mean, how do you see him transitioning to the NFL? Because I've had people tell me, Krug, there's no way he makes the team, which is be my sentiment. But then other people have told me, hey, you know what? I really like Ronnie Bell, and the toughness. In fact, the guy on NFL.com says he plays receiver with a linebacker-like toughness.
Yep.
Do you see that with Ronnie Bell?
I mean, he's willing to put the shoulder down as well. I like that. I love players that are willing to take hits and are excited for contact. Ronnie, I think that we've been blessed with the past couple of years of getting a lot of receivers into the NFL, and a lot of guys who probably could have been fourth round, fifth round picks in this draft have been UDFAs in years prior. So it's very tough to say that Ronnie Bell deserves a spot over them on a 53, but he does have that Niners mentality, of that Mauler mentality, willing to put the shoulder down, willing to take a hit. And I think that he could be a really good practice squad guy.
The 49ers, for a lot of teams, they draft a few undrafted guys and, they all get cut and they're just camp bodies. The Niners do not take that approach. They are obviously very serious about the guys that they get after the draft.
Yeah.
They target them. They aggressively pursue them. Oftentimes they'll throw bonus money. Couple guys I got to ask you about. One is Joey Fisher. Mel Kiper had Joey Fisher mocked to the Niners at 99, 10 days before the draft.
Yeah.
And he went undrafted out of Shepherd.
I know.
When you watch his film is crazy. But I always tell people, always temper your enthusiasm when you're watching a future NFL player on the line of scrimmage, ragdolling guys who are going to be accountants in 3 years. It's you know what I'm saying? It's like you don't know how much credence to put. I mean, some of the greatest, most dominating films I've ever seen were Division II linemen who were on that NFL trajectory going up against Division II defensive linemen. And Joey Fisher's film is exactly that. He's ragdolling guys. He's throwing them down. He's burying them. I really like the pick. Or the not pick. I like the signing. They did give him, I think, $150,000 guaranteed. So, they love this guy. But you know what? Yeah. That's always not an indicator. Last year, they gave, I think, $90,000 to Donovan West, a center out of ASU. And Donovan West showed up in camp and was one of the first cuts and never really threatened to make the final 53, and they gave him a significant bonus. So the bonus is just somebody's belief that this guy's got upside.
Yep.
But what do you think of Fisher?
I mean, we were talking about it after night one, where like these are some of our dream day 2, day 3 targets. And, you have a really good mentor there in Trent Williams, who can definitely train a mauler who likes to ragdoll people, how to properly do it in the NFL, as well as how to be a little bit more polished. Because a lot of these guys, like Trevor Penning, are really rugged and they get a lot of flags, and that's just killing momentum of the offense. You're never going to be a full-time starter if you're going to continue killing the momentum that is being earned, because football is a game of momentum. You need to ride it. And if you're having holding calls, you're going to stop it. And that's just going to kill the morale of the team. So for me, I think it's an amazing situation. We were talking about it. It was a dream pick for us. And I think if they took him at 99 over Jake Moody or 101 over Cam Lawton, like people would be talking about it very differently because a lot of people like Fisher.
Isn't that funny? If a guy goes in the third round where Kuiper had him, you'd be like, hey, the Niners. A lot of people gave the Niners low draft grades for not getting a tackle. But if they had drafted this tackle out of Shepard in the third round, it would have been like, oh, they found a sleeper. But because they didn't draft one, they waited till the end of the draft to sign Joey Fisher. It's like, oh, they didn't address their needs.
Yeah.
Nobody, when they put on the ads and they run out on the field this summer, nobody's going to say, oh, you were a 7th round pick, come over here. Oh, you were an undrafted free agent, go over there. They're all in the same field, wearing the same pads, and wearing the same uniforms. Yeah. And there's not a huge difference between going in the 5th round and being an undrafted guy. It's just beauty in the eye of the beholder. There's some trait, there's some angle that a scout sees that says, hey, let's invest our 5th round pick in him. I've seen teams where they felt better about their undrafted free agent than their 5th round pick, but they just knew the guy would be there as an undrafted free agent, and so that's why they didn't draft him.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a hard thing to evaluate, but I love the Fisher pickup.
For sure.
One of the guys I got to ask you about, there's a couple guys from Texas in their undrafted list that are really interesting to me. One is Ronald Awatt, who played for UTEP. I don't know how much you saw of UTEP. I don't know how much you've seen of Awatt. But these 49er running backs, Shanahan's got such a great eye, and Bobby Turner has such a great eye for these late round picks or these undrafted backs. I mean, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr., Matt Breida, who was the little back who wound up in Jacksonville this year. Who's
Hasty, Jermichael.
Yeah, Jermichael Hasty. I mean, they just every year they find one or two guys.
Yeah,
they signed a couple backs that are interesting after the draft. Ronald Awatt from UTEP, and then Kalen Laburn from Marshall. Have you seen either of those guys?
So I have not seen Awatt. I like Marshall, funnily enough. It's one of those weird schools that I really like to watch. Actually, one of my favorite players when I first started scouting was Keon Adams, who was a running back there. So Marshall knows how to train up some good running backs. I didn't do a deep dive on him, so it's not like I watched the intricacies of his play. But, I'm going to pretty much trust the Shanahan evaluation on these guys, especially if they're late round pickups or UDFAs. Because, again, you see the traits that fit the offense, and this is a running back friendly offense. We see guys like, Trey Sermon was pretty damn solid. He ended up getting cut and sent to the Eagles, but, he was even able to be solid in this. So I think there's a versatility that the offense allows for. Like, there's a range of versatility that the offense allows for that can still be productive. And who am I to question Shanahan's picks?
Yeah, they have had an eye for running backs for sure, and Awatt looks pretty quick. The other guy, Laburn, is incredibly productive. I think both these guys, and they're both in that range. 5'10", 5'11", 205. That's not necessarily big, but they're not small. They're not scat backs. They're between the tackles guys. Should be fun to watch both of them this summer. One guy that I'm sure you've probably seen is from Texas, the cornerback return man, Deshaun Jameson.
Yep.
He played 5 years in the Longhorn program, impact return guy.
Yeah.
Maybe a nickel corner at the next level. He's only 5'10", 185, but even that's not crazy small for NFL standards. No. What do you think of Jameson? When you watch his highlights, I'm like, wow. You can see the electric nature of his return ability, and you can see ball skills and the confidence that he has playing the corner as well.
I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this, but I actually saw him in 2020. So this was one of my first ever lists, and it actually has Jameson from Texas. Ball skills and coverage ability are my favorites. So I had a 1 to 2 grade when it was 3 years ago. Like, I thought he could be a superstar. So the fact that, that just that lit up a memory. That was literally my first year when I was seeing Burrow, Chase, and all that. Jameson stuck out to me. I really did like him. I wish that he continued his career ascension. But it's unfortunate that, he never really got to take that legit role. His highlights are incredible. Hence why I gave him that 1-2 grade back in 2020. But no, it was really cool. It's really cool. Sorry. I had a little nostalgia right there with it. But Jameson, I honestly think I'd want him on my 53. That's pretty ballsy to say, but I think that his upside is totally worth it. Practice squad's more likely, but I don't think that he should not be at least on a practice squad for a team.
It's hard to give grades. It's funny. That always makes me laugh the day after the draft. And, everybody's, let me give you my grades on the draft. And it's like you feel obligated. We just all watched it, invested a bunch of time. The reality is it's going to take a year. It's probably going to take 2. Some people think it's going to take 5. I don't know about 5, but it's going to take a year or 2 before you can flesh everything out. Who's anybody's draft that stood out to you? I mean, who do you think did really well, and we'll go through their draft?
I mean, we can talk all day about the Eagles. I think they get enough damn publicity as it is. Sorry, Howie Roseman. Other teams that really did well, I honestly thought the Bills ended up really taking back their draft and really kicking ass by the end. I really liked how they were able to break it down, and there's not many picks to it either.
They drafted Dalton Kincaid out of Utah, Osiris Torrance, a very physical guard from Florida, Dorian Williams, who's one of the most productive linebackers. He's an undersized guy from Tulane, but he's incredibly productive. Justin Shorter, a gigantic possession receiver from Florida. Nick Broker, a guard from Ole Miss. And then Alex Austin, a corner from Oregon State. A lot of people like Austin. And heck the guy, from NFL.com gave them an A- grade on day 1, an A grade on day 2 and day 3. Which of their players? I like Kincaid, but he started at University of San Diego. To me, I see a guy who's a little bit, has some limitations as an athlete. I thought the other players were a little bit I understand why he was drafted so high because his college production's off the charts. But if you're asking me who's going to be the best tight end of this group in 5 years, I would not go with him.
So I differ in opinion on that one. I really like Dalton Kincaid, really surefire hands. I think that he's somebody where, when you watch Utah, he's the focal point of the offense, and the defense knows it, and he's still productive. I love guys that can overcome a defense scheming around a player. And so I'm a big fan of that. Actually, when he was at San Diego, one of my old friends actually played against him in practice, and pretty sure that Dalton Kincaid was the reason why he broke his ankle on a route. So, not Dalton's ankle, but he broke my friend's ankle because he got literally his ankles broken. But I really like Dalton Kincaid. My favorite guy from it is Justin Shorter. I loved him. He was a top 32 player until he tested in the 4.5s, because I thought he would have probably been 4.48, 4.49. He tested, I think, 4.56. Whoop-de-doo. It's 7/10 or 7/100ths of a second. But, that could be the difference between a catch versus, the defender getting in front. That frame, 6'4", 230 pounds. And, he was easily the number 1 wide receiver there for Florida. He was Anthony Richardson's right-hand man. He trusted him with all of his heart. So I love that. He was super. I loved how quickly he flipped his hips. That's one of my favorite things. It's somebody that you don't see them taking a curved route when they're able to do a sharp cut. I love guys who are able to quickly change their direction. And that's something he could do. And at 6'4", 230, he's going to be one of those guys that could certainly step up and absolutely kick ass.
One team that jumped out to me, and I don't know about the entirety of their draft, but I love Jamie Robinson going to Carolina. At pick 145. I thought that was great value. And then they may have gotten, a really great wide receiver quarterback combo. They took Bryce Young in the first round. They took Jonathan Mingo in the second round. Carolina, what do you think of the Bryce Young to Jonathan Mingo potential down the road?
I love the fact that Jonathan Mingo can get open short and make with his own, again, he's one of those guys who has a big frame. So I love the fact that you can just dump the ball to him, and he has enough of a physical presence to where safeties are still physically outmatched. And it gives Bryce, again, that quick option to be able to get the ball out. Not that he needs it. I think their offensive line could be top 5 in the NFL, which is a hot take, but I really do love their offensive line. And Jamie Robinson was another guy I was going to bring up. I thought that was an absolute steal. Even if he doesn't play an immediate role for them, it does give them an insurance policy in case Chin is I don't really want to be there. But also, I think he'd play a really good rotational safety role And he was one of my top 100 guys. He was probably number 85 on my board. So getting him at 145 was incredible value.
Everybody's got a different, feeling on this stuff,
Mhm.
but the Bears, got Darnell Wright, real
Yep.
powerhouse right tackle in
Mhm.
the first round, 10th
Yep.
overall. And then they got two really interesting players, I thought,
Mm.
later on. They got Roshan Johnson, the running back from
Oh, yeah.
Texas,
Mhm.
who real good player. And then they're the ones who wound up with Tyson Bagent, the quarterback from Shepherd after the draft.
Mm.
What do you think of Bagent? What do you think of Roshan?
So Badgett was fine. I mean, he didn't really crack my top 15 quarterbacks of the class, but he was certainly better than Jaron Hall. Sorry, I think that you like Jaron Hall, but I was just not a Jaron Hall guy. I thought he was better than Jaron. So at least they're able to not spin a pick on him, unlike their own division rivals in the Vikings. But Roshan Johnson's a beast. He's a guy he's selfless. He was happy sitting behind Bijan Robinson and taking the role of pretty much being the backseat driver. And I love that about him. He's perfectly fine just doing what he needs to do. And he has that bear mentality, that Mauler mentality, like I was talking about. He's willing to put the shoulder down. He's willing to run guys over, and his contact balance is incredible. But I do think he's athletically limited in terms of just the home run hitting ability. But I think down to down, he is a bruiser, and I would love to see him paired up with Khalil Herbert.
Dallas is interesting to me.
Yeah.
I didn't love Mozzie Smith. I thought that was a major reach for a non-pass rusher.
Yeah.
But Schoonmaker, the tight end, I think is really solid. He'll replace Dalton Schultz. DeMarvion Overshone, very popular pick, I'm sure, to keep him in the state of Texas. Very productive linebacker. Junior Fehoko, the San Jose State edge rusher. Thought that was a great pick. And then Deuce Vaughn, whose dad I didn't realize was a scout for the Cowboys.
Yep.
Getting Deuce at 212. He's a tiny little guy, but he's a terrific player. He's one of the best players in college football, despite his size. What do you think of what Dallas got done? Then they got Tyrus Wheat after the draft, and I thought that was one of the best after the draft pickups.
Yeah, so Deuce Vaughn was actually my running back too. I decided to bet on the size and just look at the pure talent. This guy he straight up can handle a linebacker coming into a hole and who might be close to 70 pounds heavier than him, and he will carry the linebacker on his back. So I love that about him. He didn't have that great of an offensive line either, so he was able to produce, even though he didn't exactly have the best situation to produce in. And I love their draft with Asim Richards. Like, I love that guy. Senior Bowl standout. He can play guard or tackle. I think that he's probably more suited for a guard role. And to be fair, I think he could eventually start. I think that's a really good situation for him to be in. DeMarvion Overshone, he's a little bit lighter, but I do like his mentality. He definitely could be a rotational starter for him. I, unlike you, do not like Luke Schoonmaker. He was my least favorite pick in the entire draft. He's going to be 25 during his rookie year, and I loved all the other tight ends that were on the board besides Schoonmaker. Like, I love Darnell Washington. There was a lot of links to Dallas, and he went probably, I think, 30 to 40 picks later. So I just think there was a lot better value there. Mozzie Smith was okay. I think they needed help on the defensive interior. It was really early, but it's a really crap defensive interior class. And apparently Kansas City was trying to move up for him. So I think that they definitely liked what they had there. He's Bruce Feldman's number one on his freaks list. So excited to see what they could do, but I really thought that they kind of whiffed on this draft overall.
How about Green Bay? And obviously they're one of the contenders for the Niners in the NFC. They started with Lucas Van Ness, and man, there was some film of Van Ness just destroying the offensive tackle that went to Tennessee from Northwestern. And then, I thought over top to bottom, I mean, it's funny, like during the draft, I wasn't thinking, wow, Green Bay's kicking ass.
Yeah.
But then I looked at their draft after it's over. I mean, listen to this list. They get Lucas Van Ness, so they get a defensive lineman. Then they get Luke Musgrave, a very athletic tight end with size. Jaden Reed, I think, is a tremendous receiver. Tucker Kraft, I thought, was an underrated tight end. So they got two tight ends and Jaden Reed. A lot of weapons there for the young quarterback. I'm not a Sean Clifford guy, just too many turnovers at Penn State. But Carl Brooks as a defensive tackle from Bowling Green, who's a pass rusher. Daniel Carlson's brother Anders as a kicker from Auburn in round 3, or day 3, I should say. Carrington Valentine, a lot of people like the corner from Kentucky.
Love
Lou
him.
Nichols, the running back from Central Michigan.
Mhm.
I even like that Grant DeBose, the wide receiver, who's about 6'3", for Charlotte. They got him
Mhm.
at the very end of the draft. Anthony Johnson from Iowa State.
Yeah.
I think Green Bay, looking back on it, may wind up with several good additions.
Yeah, I think that they had a pretty solid draft. I was not a Lucas Van Ness guy. That tape you're referring to was from 2021, where he sat Peter Skoronsky on his tush. But
Yeah,
I think the 2022 tape that they had against him, I'm pretty sure Peter Skoronsky put LVN on his butt. I might be wrong about that, but he definitely was able to handle LVN this past year, which is why I love Peter Skoronsky. That's why I had him number 6 on my board. But Luke Musgrave was my favorite pick of their draft. I think he's an absolute stud and is definitely a huge vacancy on their roster. And they definitely filled it with someone who's even better than Robert Tunyon. I thought it was interesting that they brought in Tucker Kraft as well. But, I think they both can serve a really good role in a 21 set. So good for them. Jaden Reed was intriguing. I thought he was a bit early. I like Jaden Reed. I thought he's one of my guys, but he
yeah.
went way earlier than expected. He didn't really fit what they're used to drafting. They like guys over 200 pounds, even if they're smaller. So I was really shocked when they grabbed him. But really good deep threat. Colby Wooden was one of my favorite, guys for like round 6 through 7. I didn't think he'd go this high, but he's a good tweener. He's definitely someone they might put in for Dean Lowry, but I think Carl Brooks takes the cake on that one. Tested horribly. He was going to be a top 50 guy for me. Tested horribly. Didn't even get invited to the combine. And I thought Sean Clifford pick was a joke. I didn't believe it when I first saw it, but yeah, I mean, I love Penn State, so I'm usually biased for them. Clifford's not my type of guy. We'll put it that way. But I love Carrington Valentine. He was one of my top corners in the draft. I loved him. He showed out every single week. And, even guys like Anthony Johnson, safety out of Iowa State, he was a top 100 player for PFF, and I'm not gonna lie, he deserves to get a lot of respect.
One team that I think has always struggled not always, but in the last decade has struggled mightily in the draft are the Raiders, and the Raiders have New England's regime now. They got New England's former executive as their GM. They've got Josh McDaniels as their head coach.
Yep.
I thought the Raiders hit it out of the park. I mean, Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech, blue chipper off the edge in the first round. They come back in round 2 with Michael Mayer. I think he replaces Waller at tight end. I love Byron Young from Alabama. I thought that was a great pick. Trey Tucker is a burner from Cincinnati. I'm probably overdrafted based on his size, but he's a big play guy. Jacorian Bennett, the Maryland corner, very, very good corner with a lot of speed. Aiden O'Connell, I think, was probably going to be their backup to Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. Christopher Smith from Georgia. Just didn't quite have the measurables, but he's a good player. And then the tackle that I really liked from Tennessee Chattanooga, McClendon Curtis, did not get drafted, and the Raiders signed him as an undrafted free agent. So I like what the Raiders got done. Give me your thoughts on the Raiders draft.
Yeah, so I love the Michael Mayer move up. I thought that even though I wasn't very high on him, it was like I still had him at like 40 on my board. And he fits exactly what they should be looking for. Jimmy G loves his reliable tight ends, and this is exactly what he needed. And I don't think Austin Hooper would really accomplish that at this point in his career. So Michael Mayer's going to play a pivotal role in that offense for an early second. That's going to be really, really good value. I was a little bit lower on the Byron Young pick just because I think that he didn't offer the upside that I was looking for. Funnily enough, in the 7th round, they drafted a dude named Nesta Jade Silvera. Senior Bowl standout to me. Really explosive, really fun to watch. He has a lot of aggression with his hands, and somebody when you have the aggression as well as the speed, I think he could actually make a 53. He's one of my top 200 players in the draft, and excited to see him go to a role where he could actually potentially make the roster and potentially play reps as a 7th rounder. And I mean, I know Niners fans are pretty happy with 7th rounders taking some starting reps here and there, but Aiden O'Connell was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the class. I had him top 100 on my board. I think that he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And I think he might eliminate the need for the Raiders to potentially move on from Jimmy G with a draft pick that's not him. So very excited about that one. Overall, I thought they kicked ass in the draft, and the Trey Tucker pick was probably the worst one by far.
The Rams, I think, are interesting too. Les Snead. I mean, the Rams are in a rebuild to some degree, but Les Snead's a terrific GM, and
Yeah.
I love what they got done. I mean, Steve Avila, they badly needed to improve their offensive line,
Mhm.
and Avila's a horse. I mean, he's a big time
Yeah.
guard from TCU. They took the Byron Young edge rusher from Alabama, from
Oh, yeah.
Tennessee, who's electric. I thought Stetson Bennett probably should thank Brock Purdy for going where he went,
Mhm.
but then they got Nick Hampton at Appalachian State. They
Yeah.
got Warren McClendon, who I think's a ready to play
Oof.
tackle.
Yeah.
They got Davis Allen from Clemson, the tight end. They got Trevius Hodges Tomlinson, who was a Thorpe Award guy for
Yep.
TCU. And then even the last pick, I really love Dawan Johnson from
Mhm.
Toledo, and they took him at 259. So I was hoping the Rams would fall on their face, but not so much. I kind of like their
Yeah.
draft.
Usually with teams with a large quantity of picks, they don't exactly get the quality that you're looking for. But the Rams uncharacteristically addressed offensive line earlier than expected and did a very good job at it. I love that Steve Avila pick. It's still my favorite pick that they ever did. So good for them. Even Warren McClendon, again, you're getting someone who could potentially start at right tackle. Even if he doesn't, he's going to be a very fun swing tackle. And for a fifth round selection, that is a kick ass deal. Someone who you didn't highlight, Puka Nakua. I love him to death. He showed out on day one of the Senior Bowl, decided to book it and leave after that, which is, I mean, I was hoping for a little bit more Puka tape versus these DBs, but he's absolutely great in terms of getting that jump ball. And he might not have the highest amount of athleticism, but he is able to use it very well. They did a great job. They got value everywhere. Even guys like Zach Evans, running back in the 6th round. Speaking of
Yeah,
TCU,
Ole
I
Miss.
mean, yeah, no, yes, from TCU to Ole
Oh
Miss. I
yeah,
mean, he got benched by a freshman, but that freshman's probably going to be a first round pick in a couple of years. So, his talent is certainly unquestioned. He was one of my top 10 backs starting out the year. And to see him go in the 6th round because he had a poor role, I mean, it's incredible value. So, unfortunately, I have to agree. The Rams had a really, really good draft.
yeah, they did. And the team that that nobody wants to hear here had a great draft was the Eagles.
Oh, yeah.
But let's talk about the Eagles draft for a second because they traded up for Jalen Carter,
Mhm.
and Jalen Carter wore number 88 for Georgia. If you watch the film, I mean, when he was on, he just looked like like he looked like Richard Seymour. I mean, he looked like a future Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But he did show up for the off-season workouts out of shape. He's had some off-the-field issues. There's some baggage there. Um, if they can get Jalen Carter to really play, and if they can get the most talent out of Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith,
Game over.
those guys, then it's going to be an incredible draft.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, to me, Jalen Carter is a boomer bust guy, and I'm a little concerned about some of the off-field issues.
Yeah.
Then they went Tyler Steen, thought that was
Mhm.
safe. I love Sidney Brown.
Yeah.
I think Sidney Brown's a tremendous player. They
Mhm.
came back and traded up in the 4th round for Keely Ringo.
Yeah.
They drafted Stanford's Tanner McKee, and they finished with a pretty athletic defensive tackle in Moro Ajomo
Yeah.
from Texas. Where to me the Eagles draft is an A if Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith fulfill their potential, but there's reason to believe that both those guys could struggle. And I'm not saying they're going to struggle physically, but just struggle with adapting to what it means to be a professional.
Yeah, I
I
mean, I think that this is the best situation they can go to. They did not have these issues when the whole entire crew was together a year or two ago. Like, I didn't see a bunch of issues with Jalen Carter and his personality back when they won their first championship when Jordan Davis was his buddy. We were talking about this after night one. I think this is a great location for him to have a surrounding cast that supports his maturation and his growth. And there could have been locations where they already put him on a pedestal as like their number one, like their face of their franchise. And that would have been really bad for someone who has these personality concerns, these maturity issues. I honestly think that they had arguably the best draft. They have instant chemistry with the majority of their defense, including Keely Ringo, which, again, that was quite insane. He needs a lot of work, but it's somebody where you have veterans to pretty much take the brunt load of the starting role and let him develop into the star that he should be. And my only issue is that they didn't draft a linebacker. I thought they could have definitely used it after losing some of the linebacker talent that they had. But Nakobe's going to step up into a starting role, and you already have a ton of other players. Nolan Smith could even start at linebacker, but there's a solidified role for him down the line with Hassan Reddick. He has, I think, 2 years left on his contract and might even want out before that for more money. Probably not. But I mean, overall, they did a kick-ass draft. I love Sidney Brown. We talked about him earlier, similar to Jair Brown in terms of that mentality. Just, go hit the hole, absolutely like dominant in terms of physicality. But overall, I mean, the probably my least favorite pick is Tyler Steen or Tanner McKee, because Tyler was a little bit early, didn't really see that much upside, a little bit older. And then Tanner McKee is just pretty much a BPA pick for him. They just want a depth quarterback.
Seattle,
Yeah.
John Schneider is I think he's as good a GM as there is. This guy just makes great pick after great pick. I thought they were terrific during the draft and after the draft. They get Devin Witherspoon, so they get a true number one corner. So they got Tariq Woolen, Kobe Bryant, and Devin Witherspoon. They're rebuilding their own Legion of Boom. Then they get Jackson Smith, Enigma, from Ohio State, and I'm not a huge fan of his because I mean, he was great with the Buckeyes, but I don't know. I don't see incredible traits there. He's had some games where he was easily the best player on the field, but that one I kind of wondered. That to me is a little bit more boom or bust. But Derek Hall, the edge rusher from Auburn, very safe pick. Zach Charbonnet, really solid running back with size and speed, or at least a lot of size. I don't know about speed. Anthony Bradford, the monster guard from LSU. Then they got the Outland Trophy winner later on, Oluwatimi from Michigan. They took Cam Young out of Mississippi State, really strong defensive tackle. But what I really loved about Seattle was then after the draft, they land Matt Landers from Arkansas, 6'5", 200-pound receiver, runs 4.3. Ty Okada, kind of a sleeper workout guy from Montana State. Lance Boykin from Coastal Carolina, kind of a sleeper corner. Christian Young, a safety / linebacker from Arizona, very productive. And Arquan Bush from Cincinnati. I just think Seattle is coming. I mean, that's a lot of talent to add to their roster. I'm not sure how good they're going to be this year. They still didn't get a quarterback of the future, but man, they've really, if they're going with Geno, and obviously they believe in Geno, man, they're surrounding him with a lot more talent.
Their first round to me showed that they're trying to win it this year. Without Aaron Rodgers there, there's a big vacancy for like a legitimate team to, truly step up and compete. I think that they're going to be one of those that, they just made the playoffs, but then just couldn't do much there. With Brock Purdy probably going to be sidelined for a while with that shoulder, trying to just get comfortable throwing again. I think there is that opportunity for them to go. And I think they smelled the blood in the water. So I think they're going to be going, and they're just trying to arm up for a 1 year go with Geno. Devin Witherspoon and JSN, you're solidifying your corner core, your defensive back core, as well as your receiving core. And then you have Zach Charbonnet there, my buddy from high school. It's like, I didn't like that pick personally because I want Zach to be a true RB1. I thought that it's like, I really don't want him splitting carries with Kenneth Walker. But if you're trying to make a push, the running backs are the ones who can make the biggest needle move in terms of that instant impact. These running backs, people don't have tape on them in the system that they're going to be going into, and they're getting the ball 15 times a game, and you're having to face a guy where you're still having to learn their role in a new offense. So I think if they're trying to push it for right now, they're doing a damn good job. I just wish they got a little bit extra help on the defensive interior earlier, and maybe some extra edge rush help, which I like Derek Hall, but I thought it was a little bit early, but he's a safe pick.
Two last teams I want your thoughts on. One is Tampa. To me, the best pick in the entire draft was Tampa getting Kalijah Cansey at 19. I just think Cansey's a monster. And then you got Cody Mauch, one of my favorite offensive linemen in round 2. They got Yaya Diaby out of Louisville, who's a very productive edge rusher. They got him in the 3rd round. Payne Durham from Purdue, I think, is a really underrated tight end. Jose Ramirez, the edge rusher, they got him at 196 overall. And then after the draft, Tampa got Sean Tucker, the running back from Syracuse, and Raheem Jarrett, a wide receiver from Maryland. I think both those guys probably make their team. What'd you think of Jason Light's draft?
So I was a little bit scratching my head with Kalijah. I think he's an amazing talent, but this is just a team where I would hope that Kalijah would be the final piece for a Super Bowl roster. Ends up being a final piece for a team that Caleb Williams will be taking over. So, eventually a Super Bowl roster. I love the fact that they brought in Sean Tucker as well as Rock Jarrett. Sean Tucker fell because he had the same heart issue that I think the defensive tackle out of Michigan a couple years ago, Maurice Hurst, had. So he did fall because of a legit medical injury, not because of his talent, because that guy was also a top 100 player for me. Rock Jarrett took a step back, but I mean, he's far better than some of the wide receivers that went in the 5th round even. So excited to see him get a role there with the Buccaneers. There's a lot of opportunity to be had with a team that has a lot of veteran presence because they tried to just win it all. And, Payne Durham, I thought tight end should have been a position they targeted earlier, but it's a really good piece to grab. I think that his value was closer to that early 4th round for me. Overall, I thought they did a good job. My least favorite pick for them was Josh Hayes. That was pick 181, and that's not even a bad pick. So overall, I thought they did a really solid job.
The other last one I want to get your thoughts on, Rand Carthon, I thought, had a tremendous first draft with Tennessee Titans. I mean, Skoronski, I think Skoronski's a really solid player.
Hell yeah.
And they got him at 11 overall. Then they traded up for Will Levis, who I don't love Will Levis, but he's got the arm strength is undeniable. He's got a huge arm.
Yeah.
Tyjae Spears was, I saw him against SC late in the year. He had almost 200 yards in that game. He was incredible. Yeah. Josh Wiley, the tight end from Cincinnati, very underrated. They got Jalen Duncan from Maryland, an offensive tackle that needs a little work, but getting him at 186. Yeah. But then what I really loved is that after the draft, Tennessee, Stephen Jones from Appalachian State, good corner. John Ojukwu, the offensive lineman from Boise State, really liked Ojukwu. Shaquille Brown, the defensive tackle from Troy's talented. Tyreek Jones, the slot corner from Boise State's really talented. I think Rand had a really nice first draft in Tennessee.
Yeah, they got one of my few A-pluses for the draft. I was praying that they would not go Will Levis over Peter Skoronski if he were there at 11, and they didn't. And then somehow they still got Will Levis. So they got their quarterback for, honestly, a bargain deal. You don't get the 5th-year contract, but it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, you still get your starting offensive lineman, whether he plays tackle, whether he plays guard. Doesn't really matter. You're going to get a really quality starter for an extensive period of time. Again, Will Levis, you have a future on your team now, and that's really good because quarterbacks getting expensive. Tyjae Spears, really nice compliment back there to Derrick Henry. I think that's excellent. Josh Wiley was actually a top 64 player for me. I saw him plenty of times in person. I think this guy is the most underrated player in college football. Jalen Duncan, I mean, man, kid has talent, just hasn't really put it on the football field yet. And this is a great spot for him to, sit, develop, and, the expectations aren't super high. So it's probably a good spot for him to take a backseat and be able to grow and develop. So overall, good job.
Overall, good job with you, Alex. Doing a great job coming on and giving us your rundown on this thing. Tell people about Hail Mary Sports, what kind of content you put out, and tell them how, if they want to connect with you, how they can go about doing so.
Yeah, so I'm primarily on YouTube. If you guys want to hear me speak logically, go there. If you guys want to hear me speak incoherently, go to Twitter. It's more entertaining that way. But it's just Hail Mary Sports on Twitter. It has an extra S on it. You guys can find it there. I talk about the NFL draft primarily, but I'm adding in sports betting as well as fantasy football, potentially mediocre Madden streams. Yes, don't have too high of expectations. It's made for fun, not for, being an elite player. But I really just want to have fun. I like bringing guys on. Actually, as of right now, I am supposed to bring Cam Ward, the quarterback from Washington State, on pretty soon. So excited to be able to get another cool face into the room. It should be very exciting nonetheless. So there's a lot going on, and very excited for it. Very excited.
Well, man, keep it up. Great stuff. We enjoy your content. Thanks for coming on here, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully, we'll do something with you maybe this summer, getting ready for camp. And best of luck to Hail Mary Sports and you going forward. Thanks for jumping in.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Larry. Have a good one.
You too. There you go. Alex is he's a young guy from Texas and does a nice job. He really does. I asked him to come on the other day. He's like, I got a final. So he's going to SMU, but, the guy follows it and he knows his stuff. He really does. All right. If you want to chime in on the chat, feel free. I'm going to play a spot here. I'll come back. We'll read some of the starred chats coming up in just a second. But first, a word from our sponsor, Pig and a Pickle.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, welcome back to the Krueger Show. Actually, one more fire. All right, now we are back on the Krueger Show. Thanks to Alex Barbour for stopping by. Let's hit the chat, see what people have to say. A number of interesting comments here. People talking about Debo, people talking about Ambry Thomas, fish and chips. Sausage is an expression. Damn right. Damn right it is. We got this one from Gregus. Debo said when asked that Ty Davis Price was the player he was most excited to see this year. That's interesting. That is interesting. Quincy says, I actually love Larry's commercials. Krueger, Krueger. Thank you. Thank you very much. Jimmo Gorillo says, I think that's why Kyle gave up all those picks. The roster is good, just a quarterback hole. Who takes the biggest leap forward this year for the 49ers? That's interesting. As far as who takes the biggest forward, I think Danny Gray could easily take a huge leap forward. Danny Gray is a much better receiver than people think. He's not just a speed threat. He's got deep ball skills. He's definitely a burner. But a lot of guys who are burners have terrible ball skills. Danny Gray doesn't have terrible ball skills. I expect him to really step up this year. So I'm looking for him. I'm looking for Nick Zakelj, who John Lynch told us is having a phenomenal offseason. Zakelj is a lot of what you're looking for as an offensive lineman. Smart, tough, physical. I think he's going to step up. I'm definitely looking for Trey Lance. I mean, let's be honest. Trey Lance, coming off the injury, another year in the offense, he should be quite a bit better. He absolutely should. The arrow's pointing straight up on Trey. Jordan Mason, you want to throw Ty Davis Price? I'll see your Ty Davis Price, and I'll throw in Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason, I wanted to see last year, and then we saw him at little glimpses, and he looked awesome. Defensive line, definitely Kalia Davis. Kalia Davis, I saw Kalia Davis practicing at the end of the year, and all I got to say is, wow. Wow. Kalia Davis has potential to really be not just good, but very good. He's 300 pounds, and he's fast. I mean, you can see the speed. Kevin Givens has got good wheels. Nothing like Kalia Davis. T.Y. McGill can shoot a gap, and he's got mobility. Nothing like Kalia Davis. So Kalia Davis, I'm really excited to see him healthy and what he looks like out there. I'm really interested to see D. Winters and Jalen Graham. Just two young, fast, athletic linebackers. Throw in Marcelino. I think Marcelino's got a great chance to make the team this year. McCrary Ball. Remember that name, Marcelino McCrary Ball. Started as a corner and then, at Indiana finished up as a safety. Didn't play linebacker. For the Niners, he's playing linebacker, and he last year was a transition year. This year, I would imagine Marcelino is going to show up ready to roll. Who else could really step up this year? Sammy Womack. So Quantrez Knight, those two guys are the guys in the secondary. And, of course, Jake Moody, right? I want to see Jake Moody. I want to see what he looks like. Deshaun Jameson. to me, Avery Young, the one, undrafted guy we haven't really broken down is Avery Young. His 40 time was slow, but some of the notes on Avery Young, very productive football player at Rutgers. So I'm going to study him a little bit. That's going to do it for us today, or I should say for now. It's 1:22 right now. At 3 o'clock, join me on Damon Bruce's channel. Damon and I will do the home and home on his channel today. So join me at 3 o'clock over there. For those of you who ordered Krueger Show t-shirts, I'm going to go mail them right now in my free time to get those out to you guys. Vicky, who wanted one in a triple XL for somebody in her world, I won't have the triple XL for a couple more days, so just be patient. I absolutely will get that in the mail to you. I'm hoping by Friday, but the triple XLs took a while to print up, and I still haven't gotten them back yet. I thought I had them, but I don't, so I'll go down to Caceres and pick them up down in Dublin. So I definitely will have that in the mail in the next 3 days. So Vicky, try to be patient on that shirt, but it is coming. It absolutely is coming. And if anybody wants a shirt, just contact me. Tell me how many you want. They're $35. It's $25 plus shipping, and we'll get them out to you within the next day or two. Tomorrow on the show, we've got Game 2, Warriors-Lakers. Very disappointing Game 1. So that's coming up tomorrow night on the show. Tomorrow morning on the show, we'll have a 49er undrafted free agent. I won't tell you which one, but he will be joining us tomorrow morning at 9. Jordan Elliott tomorrow at 1 o'clock will be on. I love Jordan's breakdown. We'll hear his thoughts on the draft. Later on in the week, Eric Froton's going to stop by. We'll get his view of the draft. Vish Kumaran's going to stop by on Friday. So we got a lot coming up, but check us out today at 3 o'clock on the Damon Bruce Plus channel on YouTube. And if you haven't liked or subscribed over there, please do. And, of course, if you haven't liked and subscribed here, please do as well. We just got to 17,000 subs, and we're now creeping up on 17,200 just a couple days later. But thanks to everybody who has supported the channel. So I'm going to go inside and make my 13-year-old some lunch because his mom's in Atlanta with his sister checking out grad school or dropping her off at grad school. And so I will make the 13-year-old some lunch. Then I'll hit the post office. Then I'll be back here at 3 o'clock for Damon Bruce and yours truly on the Plus. One-star chat. We got this one from Quincy Jacinto. Who's the starting O-line week 1? Come on, Krug. Give it to me. Give it to me. Starting O-line week 1. I'm going to go with Matt Pryor to beat out Trent Williams. Now, Trent Williams will be the starter at left tackle. Aaron Banks, Big Banks, who's one of my favorite guys to interview. Really good dude. He's the guard. Jake Brendel, Pro Bowl center, Pro Bowl alternate. He'll be at center. Though Feliciano is right there to give him a run for his money. I'll say Burford will be at right tackle, or right guard, I should say. And I'm going to say Colton McKivitz is right tackle. And I have belief in Colton McKivitz. I really do. Colton McKivitz is smart. He's tough. The moment's not too big. He's poised. He's ready for this. The Niners also are going to have a pretty good competition there. You're going to have McKivitz. You're going to have Jalen Moore. You're going to have Nick Zakelj. I think Joey Fisher. I think all the Matt Pryor. I think that's a pretty good battle royale right there for that right tackle spot. But that's what I expect. Trent, Banks, Brendel, Burford, McKivitz. If I got to go wild card, I'll say possibly Burford kicks out to right tackle and Feliciano or Zakelj or maybe the combo share right guard, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be McKivitz, Burford on the right side, Trent and Banks on the left side, Brendel at center. It's not a bad line. It absolutely is not a bad line. Thanks to all of you for jumping in. Thanks for Quincy on the chat there, and also let me get to the bottom of the chat. Joey says Forster's a good coach. He'll have them ready, I think. Yeah. Oh, no question. John says I believe in our O-line as long as they're not forced to pass block. If that happens, SF is lost. I don't know about that. Gregus says Forster is brilliant. Gregus also with Feliciano as a player. Yeah, I mean, you heard Lynch call him a glue player. Giants win today, by the way. They beat the Astros 4-2. How about that? 7 scoreless for Logan Webb. Allowed that 2-run home run in the 8th inning, and that was it. Giants get the 4-2 win. Good for the Gyros. Get a win in Houston. So, but yeah, join us at 3 on Damon Bruce Plus. Until then, hope everybody has a great rest of your day. And thanks for checking out the Krueger Show on YouTube. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Careful, whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to